Good evening, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Fort Wayne Community Schools Board of Trustees. We will begin the meeting as we do every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Steve, would you like to begin the roll call members?
Yes, good evening. I'm Steve Corona from the 5th District.
Good evening, Glenna Yale from the 2nd District.
Good evening, Tom Smith, 3rd District.
Maria Norman, member at large.
Ann Duff, member at large.
And Jordan Levemoff, do we know? He'll probably pop in later. And I'm Julie Hollingsworth, elected from District 1. And on my far left is Barb Trout, clerk of the board. And our superintendent, Dr. Wendy Robinson. Good evening. Well, now this is too small to read. Okay, so.
Zoom.
So we begin with awards and recognitions, and we are going to recognize an IHSAA Champion of Character School. And all I have to do is scroll down.
You can touch the screen. It's touch screen, so easy.
That's right, it is a touch screen. Okay.
Oops.
It's recommended that the board recognize the Northrop High School Athletic Department for the school's distinction as a Champion of Character School. Each year, the Indiana High School Athletic Association recognizes schools for completing the sportsmanship program. Northrop was one of 16 IHSA member schools to be recognized in 2016-17. And that would be what, out of about 400? Okay. Northrop met or exceeded all 5 criteria for the IHSAA NAIA Character Challenge Program to reach the distinction of being named a Champion of Character. Northrop Athletic Department is represented today by coaches and student athletes. So please come forward as your name is read so that we may congratulate you. Brian Bunner, baseball player. Braden Kleindienst, also baseball. Jack Hayden, baseball. Katie Moravec, a gymnast. Elise Niederholtmeyer, also a gymnast. Adam Bergman, member of the swim team. Hope swim season hasn't started yet. Zach Bergman, swim team. Lily Marquardt, swim team. Tanya Barrett, also on the swim team. And baseball coach Matt Brumbaugh. Gymnastics coach Kim Koch. Swim and dive coach Ben Kaywood. Slide down. And principal Jason Witzegruder.
Come on, 2 lines, 3 lines, come on.
And athletic director Robert Schenk.
Where are we going? Oh. Arrange yourselves. We have to see everybody's face. Say the same.
They got a banner.
Anyone
They
who
came
wants to
prepared.
Have to come to the front.
hop up and
Look,
take a
they've got a
picture,
banner.
you are absolutely
banner, that's
welcome
cool.
to be here.
All right, here.
Oh, my gosh.
This is you. I'm not holding it. This is very impressive.
Nice.
Where's it gonna go? In the gym.
Jim?
Jim.
Very impressive. Why did they put it in orange and brown?
I'm okay with the blue.
Can't have everything.
All right, hold on a little bit. We don't want it.
I'm okay with the blue.
All right, parents, feel free. All right, are we all in here?
Well, they probably.
Go ahead. Is that it? All right, thank you.
Jason?
Go back up.
What does the
Jason?
banner say?
Can we see the banner?
Can we see?
Do you have a question?
Yes.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
All right, 5-star leadership school.
Respect, responsibility?
Wow, that's
Okay.
incredible.
Absolutely cool.
Very good. So that was one of my questions, what the 5 areas of leadership was. So I don't know, Jason, maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about the program and what you did at Northrop to achieve this fine honor?
Yeah, it was kind of cool because Bob Schenk, I had received an email from IHSAA stating that we had received this award, and I know that Bobby's been working for years to try to get that award, and I sent him the email, and he said, there's got to be a mistake, something's wrong. So he called IHSAA, and they said, no, you have met all criteria, your coaches have, and really what it comes down to is just sportsmanship, and he is really adamant about making sure that he meets with all the parents and coaches and with kids, and we just keep educating everybody about how we should be acting at those events, and so I know he was really proud of that this time, and once he came back and said it was real, we actually received it, so out of 16 schools in the state, that was pretty neat, so we're real
Right.
proud of our kids.
That's great.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Okay. Now you got to roll it back up.
Yeah, that's a test. One of the things while they're rolling, Faye Robbins started,
Hey, guys, you can help too.
teamwork people.
Straighten it out real flat, and then there you go.
There we go. Faye Robbins started the conversation years ago about the whole sportsmanship, character development, and one of the things we probably need to bring back as a report, Faye, is our whole habitudes and some other things. Russ Isaac's been involved. We have Mr. Tipman at Snyder, and so this is a very planned, well-orchestrated focus. We are absolutely proud that you received that. But what we're trying to make sure is that kids understand the character building is just as important as the winning on the field or on the court. So thank you for being the first one
Is
to be
there-
recognized for that.
Is there still, I know some years ago, there was an SAC sportsmanship workshop or something like that for students, and every school sent, do they still have that, or?
Dr. Robinson brought up the habitudes, and I know that we had some coaches and ADs that went down just this year, again, and were a part of that training. As far as SAC, I know we're getting ready to have another meeting here yet this Wednesday, and I know that they're always talking about awards and recognitions and
Right.
things like that, but I'm not 100% on that specific thing, but, yeah.
We'll get back, but one of the things that we've done is under Kirk Tipman and Russ's leadership, we are identifying and have identified a coach at each of the high schools. We talked about it a long time ago, but we're just now putting it into place, that their sole focus is helping that connection between students and coaches and parents about what it is that makes for a person good character in the athletics. So we probably need to have that as a report to show you some of the work that's been done to make this a focus throughout the district. But we are very proud of you. Thank you so much.
Well, this is very impressive because I know that in the heat of competition, the adults get carried away and can cause issues. So it's really up to our student athletes to show the way as to how to play competitively, but respectfully too. And so
Yeah.
hats off to students here.
Yeah, and thank you, coaches.
I don't know if they fight in the pullover events, but I know that on other fields of endeavor,
Yeah.
it gets a little
Thank you.
Thank you.
dicey.
Yeah, congratulations, Jason, and to Bob, too. And go ahead and leave. You won't bother us in the least. We know you have important things to do.
Thanks for
like
being-
study, homework.
Must be me.
Okay, next we have the consent agenda, and these are items that come to us every meeting. They include the minutes from our last meeting on September 11th. They include vouchers and payroll, vouchers for the period ending September 25th, and payroll for the period ending September 1st. And those, of course, are, especially the vouchers, I know are kept on file for like 7 years or something, somewhere in some unknown location. And, but those can be viewed by the public. And then they also include the personnel report. And Dr. Robinson, was there anything on the personnel report you wanted to highlight?
Yes, one is a happy event, the other one is not so happy, but we're going to go through it anyway. I'd like to introduce Beth Cleaver. She is the new principal at Student, and you know, we gave her an early start because we needed her to get there and get the ball. Stand up so we can all stare at you. That's part of coming.
Congratulations.
She started out, she was the assistant principal at St. Joe Central since 2015. Started her career here and got Garrett Kaiser Butler. Did work really started in Fort Wayne in 1986 at Jefferson Middle School. Left us for a little while, but saw the light and came back. So we are very pleased to have her here with us. Thank you. She's hit the ground running. The other is in the classified personnel report, and Barb Trout, who has been with me for 18 years, is retiring. And so we're going to plan some activities that we'll let the board know about Barb's going on. She has grandchildren, that's all I need to say. And I am very happy for her, but I wanted to recognize her tonight for all the work she's done for all of us. So that's it. I don't think there's any other
And
introduction.
I'm glad you did. And lucky, I mean, I'm sure your replacement will do a fine job. We still have you for 2 more meetings, though. Okay. So
Julie, I wrote to Barb.
give us a, what's that?
I wrote to Barb when I found out that she was going to retire, and I said, thank you, Barb, for keeping me straight and showing me where to sign.
It's a tough job, keep you in line, but somebody got to do it.
She's raised me for 18 years, so that's the toughest job. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion, second?
Move
for the-
approval of the consent agenda, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Jordan. Any other comments or questions? I'm sure we'll get another opportunity to roast you, to congratulate you. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us to old business, of which there is none. Do we ever have any old business?
We try not to.
I know, that's because we take care of
Take care of business.
things quickly. Okay, so that brings us to new business. And first on the agenda is the purchase of Lenovo laptops, like these things right here, right? Okay. It's recommended that the board approve the purchase of 3,474 Lenovo ThinkPad Yoga 11E laptop computers from ProSys of Indianapolis for $1,556,004. These laptops are for student use at various schools at each level and will expand the capability for teachers to support instruction and enhance learning environment through technology integration. This purchase is part of a 5-year plan that aims to provide equitable technology access to all students and better prepare our students for college and their career. Fort Wayne Community Schools was able to secure pricing that was below the General Services Administration pricing. Indiana law does not require public bidding for purchases made at or below GSA pricing. Funding will come from the Common School Fund, and our Director of Technology, Jack Bird, is available to answer any questions. Do we have a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Glenna. Anyone have any questions?
I had a question. It says that the laptops are for use at various schools at each level. Is there any, I know when we did the last purchase, they were for like all the third graders. Is there a specific age group or grade level that we're focusing on with this purchase?
This particular purchase, it is for all levels. We accomplished being 1-to-1 in 3 through 5, but there are still older computers that we're replacing in the elementary. However, the majority of these are going into secondary buildings.
Any other questions? How close are we, I'm curious, Jack, to being like 1-to-1?
Well, in 3-5, we are 1-to-1. So we're now building the capacity in our secondary, and it will take the full 5 years. So we're in year 2 right now of the plan.
I do have a comment. I went to Irwin and I got to see the third graders using these, and they absolutely loved them. So,
Yeah.
and I made a point to ask them, like, do you like these?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, we love them. So, just a no.
Yeah, they're doing a great job there.
Jack, at year 5, then we have to start circulating again, do we not?
That is correct.
So this is an ongoing investment cycle for us as a board that we ought to keep on the far end of the horizon, because it's going to continue to cycle over years and years and years.
Correct, correct, correct.
So what would you say is the average lifespan of the use of a laptop in
We're
school?
hoping for 5 years.
Hoping.
Okay,
No, we put a warranty on them so that, you know, we can replace them. So we do hope
Okay.
to get 5 years. In the
Okay.
past, we've got 5 years out of our computers, so that's why we're hopeful that these will last 5 as well.
okay, cool. Any other questions? Thanks, Jack. Okay, well, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that brings us to, the laptops are paid for through the Common School Fund, and so next we have application for a Common School Fund loan. It's recommended that the board approve the application for and acceptance of an advancement from the Indiana Common School Fund for educational technology equipment in the amount of $1,950,000. Advancements from the Common School Fund provide funds for school districts to purchase educational technology. Fort Wayne Community Schools will use these funds to help fund the Fort Wayne Community School Technology Plan previously submitted to the state. Technology funds are currently insufficient to fund all the technology needs of the school corporation. Funds are provided as a loan and are awarded to school corporations on the basis of assessed value per pupil, with low assessed value per pupil corporations receiving funds before high assessed value per pupil corporations. Fort Wayne Community Schools therefore cannot be assured of receiving the requested advancement. Should the application be successful, funds will be budgeted in the debt service fund to repay this loan beginning in the year 2019. Interest on the loan is expected to be no more than 4% and is likely to be as low as 1%. Common School Fund advancements differ from school technology advancement account loans, which Fort Wayne Community Schools receives on an annual basis. Unlike Common School Fund advancements, the technology advancements are given to all applying school corporations regardless of their assessed value per pupil ranking. And so Kathy Friend, our Chief Financial Officer, can answer any questions that any of us have. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Ann. So do we have any questions? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and that brings us to, no, wait. It's extracurricular account report, right? Okay, I didn't see that on my agenda. So, last item of new business, it's recommended that the board accept the extracurricular account reports for the second semester of the 2016-17 school year. Indiana Code 20-41-1-8 requires an accurate account of all money received and expended by the extracurricular accounts. A report of the sources of all receipts, the purposes for which the money was expended, and the balance on hand is required to be filed with the school board of trustees. All extracurricular semester reports were audited by the business office. The general ledger summary report of each school's accounts is provided. All extracurricular records are maintained for 5 years and are available for inspection. And questions, again, can be addressed by Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend. Do we have a motion and a second?
I approve. Move for approval.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jordan. Any questions? So we had this big, thick report from each school chronicling all, it's amazing, you know, when you look at it, all the extracurricular accounts that a school has. Every activity, every club, every class has to have its own separate account. Seeing no questions? Okay. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Account reports approved. And that brings us to the report. Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend will present a report that describes the year 2018 budgets for the general fund and the 8 tax-supported funds. Racial balance, we should ask somebody to name them all. Racial balance, capital projects, transportation, bus replacement, debt service, referendum debt, pension, bond, and museum of art. So this is the report, and the public hearing on the budget will be held at our next meeting on October 9th, and then board action, where we say yay or nay, that is scheduled for the last meeting of October on the 23rd.
Okay,
Kathy,
thank you.
all yours.
President Hollingsworth, Dr. Robinson, and school board members, I'm going to present to you the 2018 budget tonight. The agenda for this evening is the normal things that you've seen. We have a few members who have not gone through this process yet, so there are certain requirements that the state has. We'll look at the general fund first, and then the property tax supported funds. We'll make comparisons to last year, and then we'll talk about the key takeaways. So this is the calendar that we follow, and after this meeting, there will be an advertisement in both newspapers tomorrow for the capital projects and the bus replacement plans, not the entire budget, just those 2 plans. The actual other budgets are advertised on Gateway. So,
Next year it'll just be one newspaper, right?
right.
Save us some money.
Yeah. October 9th is the public hearing, and that is on the budget as well as the bus replacement plan and the capital projects plan, and then October 23rd is the scheduled date to adopt. We have to adopt by the end of October, and then the state is to give us our budget order by February 15th for next year. These are the items that on the last day that you will approve, the documents that you'll approve, and that includes the actual budget, the maximum levy or property tax that we can collect, the bus replacement plan fund and the capital projects plan fund, and then 2018 pension bond tax neutrality. So these are the funds that President Hollingsworth mentioned that are a part of this budget. This does not include any of the grants that the district receives or any other types of miscellaneous funds. Only those that receive school funding formula money or property taxes are included. So I wanted to point out before we get started that next year is going to look a lot different than this year. The buckets that we are used to, that we're going to talk about tonight, are going to be replaced with two buckets that are called the educational fund and the operational fund. And the school funding formula dollars will be divided between the educational fund and the operational fund, which the board will make the approval for how that split happens. And then the funds that are truly operational funds, like transportation, bus replacement, and capital projects, will all go through the operational fund. So it'll be quite a bit different next year than this year. We don't have directions from the state yet. That is coming very soon, and we'll start working through what that's going to look like for us. So, you know, we will have to make decisions as a corporation about how we still think about the different silos and how we want to fund certain things, because there are some advantages to the current system. So we'll talk more about that later. So first of all, we'll talk about the general fund. And the revenue from the general fund is primarily funded with state taxes, and the majority of the expenditures are for salaries and fringe benefits. This slide shows you that 89% of the general fund budget is wages and fringe benefits, and the remainder is other expenditures, which we'll show you on the next slide. About $25 million is the remaining portion of the budget, and you'll see that about a third of that is for custodial, about another third of it is for supplies, generally those that are in the school, and then another about half of that goes to vocational education, because we have to pay our fair share to the Anthus Career Center for the students that we send to that program. You'll notice that insurance and utilities says $1.5 million, but I want to point out to you that in addition to that, we spend about $6.2 million out of the Capital Projects Fund, because the legislature made a change in how they fund utilities and insurance. That's a little misleading. Our utilities and insurance are much higher than $1.5 million. So in the general fund, we're funded based on a school funding formula, and the major components of that formula include two parts, the foundation and the complexity. And the schedule shows you that foundation has been growing, which is a positive thing, but there's been less value placed on complexity, and complexity is based on the poverty of the students that are served. So all school districts receive the same amount for foundation, but complexity varies depending on a particular district's poverty level. So as that value has decreased, that affects our overall increase in the school funding formula. So for this upcoming school year, the school year we're in right now, we're only seeing a 0.7% increase, and in the next school year, we'll see a 1.2% increase in per pupil funding.
Kathy, this begs the question, but I don't assume that our complexity level has bettered itself since
No.
2015, 2016. And if that's the case, then we're being hammered on complexity because we're not giving the fair value of what we should receive based upon 2015, 2016 data.
Right. There's been a reset or a recalculation on complexity. So they have changed the formula that determines how much you get per pupil, or how much value is given to poverty in that equation. And that's something we discussed a lot with legislators. And the trend is that it's going down, so we're concerned about the future.
Poverty is being discounted.
Right.
Unfortunate.
Yes. It's not that our poverty went down, it's that poverty has been discounted in the formula. That's correct.
And so our funding is all, from the general fund, is based per pupil. So when our enrollment goes up, like it appears to have this year, then we're going to get a little bit more funding than we anticipated. Is that correct?
Correct, that's correct.
Okay.
That's right. if you look at the next slide, you'll see some history back to 2009. And so I just took the chart that you just saw, went back down to 2009, and the blue line represents the complexity. So you can see how that has gone down since 2009. Not that our poverty went down, but the formula for complexity went down. And then the red line shows the foundation increase. And so more emphasis has been put on the foundation. So if you're a school with low poverty, this formula works real well for you because the increase in the foundation. When you look at the green bar, you can see that we are actually below now where we were back in 2009. And I did have to restate some numbers because back in those earlier years, there was primetime funding provided as well as a kindergarten grant, and those went away and got folded into the formula, which I think was a good thing that happened. But in order to show that, you have to go back and restate those prior years to include those figures in there. So, we all know that what happened in 2010 when we lost $10 million in 1 year because of the economy, and then we really haven't made any much gains since 2010 when that happened. A little bit of a gain since 2010, but we're still below where we were in 2009.
And it would be interesting also to gauge that to, the inflation index.
True.
To see how,
Yep.
because, all the data shows that school funding per pupil has not kept up with inflation.
Right. Yep. Okay, so as you mentioned, the funding is based on a per pupil, the number of pupils that we have. And so the good news is that our pupil count has gone up for 17-18. This was as of count day, but it's not official yet until all records are cleaned up throughout the whole state, actually. So we make sure we're not counting the same students. But our total count went up 154 pupils. We're not funded on preschool, so when you take preschool out of the equation, we actually went up 203 students of those that we get funded for. So very positive. We had cohort increases in nearly every grade level, meaning from first grade to second grade or fifth grade to sixth grade. Nearly every grade level went up, so very positive. So this is the grand total of the revenue. One thing to keep in mind, if the per pupil dollar amount is on a fiscal year basis, but the budget is on a calendar year basis. So when you look at the revenue for 18, half of that is at one per pupil revenue and the other half is at another per pupil revenue. So you can't just take that per pupil revenue and multiply it times the number of students. It's based on different amounts. So this is our estimate for what 2010 revenue will look like, about $210 million. And we're also also funded on a per pupil basis on special ed and vocational ed, and then we also get per pupil money on the honors diploma. So those are all estimates based on the number of students that are anticipated in those areas. The miscellaneous revenue includes funds that we get from our federal grants called indirect costs to help us support those operations, as well as interest revenue is in there, summer school is in there, that type of thing.
Kathy, before we leave, the complexity issue, why did the state discount poverty more than it has in the past? Did they ever really explain that in depth?
Yeah, there's a couple of theories. I mean, the schools that were that have low poverty, the foundation amount had been fairly low for a long time and did not move. And we all agreed that the foundation amount should go up. That was because they were getting very little increases. But what happened was, in order to be able to pay for that, rather than just increase that and keep complexity where it was, it came at the expense of the complexity money, basically. So the foundation went up at the expense of the complexity money. There's a thought also that those of us who have high complexity get funding from Title I and other sources. So therefore, there's less emphasis put on complexity. But the problem with that is Title I can only be spent in Title I schools. It can't be spent in the other schools. So, and we cannot supplant. We cannot use in a non-Title I school and then use that same way in a Title I school. We have to do over and above in the Title I schools. So that theory doesn't really work because the schools that aren't Title I still have complexity issues that need to be dealt with, so.
So we don't have any freedom to take some of the foundation money and put it into the complexity
Well,
fund?
it all is one pot.
Yeah,
Okay.
all goes
Yeah,
in one.
it is
All
all
right.
in one pot. It's just that one pot isn't growing to the degree that we need it to grow, and the reason for that is because that complexity portion went down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But
You're
there was a real lobbying effort
Yeah.
about, was it 3 or 4 years ago, by low poverty districts in the state. I mean, they formed an organization, I can't remember what the name of it was, but they really lobbied the legislators to raise the foundation amount. And rightly so. I mean, I think
It was.
the foundation amount should be raised, but what the legislature decided to do, instead of just raising the foundation amount, they decided to rob from complexity, instead of really funding the way they should, because we've got to keep that $2 billion surplus, or whatever it is. But, so they robbed one to raise
Wasn't
the
that
other.
low poverty school consortium called the Artificial Turf Consortium?
Yeah, that's what,
So every
Some people call it, yes.
well-financed, low-poverty district like Carmel
Yeah, that's real
banded
poverty.
together, and, it's the political squeaky wheel.
Okay,
right,
And so that enters into it.
all right,
that is what, yeah.
all right.
And then Kathy, I just want to ask about the miscellaneous. Is that all the federal fund we get as far as Title I and all the grants we've applied for? Because that seems like a very low number.
That's just the indirect cost part. So we're allowed to, say, get 4 to 5% of the federal grants. We're allowed to move out of the federal grant as a revenue source into the general fund so that we help pay for things like purchasing or payroll or HR, those kind of functions that support the grants. So it's just a percentage of the federal grants that gets to come into the general fund to help support expenses that we pay out of the general fund.
Tom, unfortunately, we happen to have be bunched into that corner of the universe with urban school districts that don't know how to manage their district and generate student performance. We have high regard, but it's from our legislative delegation, but it's hard for other state legislators from across the state to separate us from Indianapolis and Gary. Just reading an article in the Times newspaper in Hammond where whoever the person was appointed by the state found really no financial infrastructure. They can't find, I don't know if they have a general ledger. I mean, they could not account for where all the money was going, who was on their payroll docket. I mean, it was an incredible article about the lack of infrastructure and the ability to manage dollars. So, sure, we have this two-part funding formula, and sure, we should be getting our fair share. And yes, we're doing a great job with our students, but there are other factors when all is said and done, when money is allocated out in that 11th hour of the General Assembly.
No good deed goes unpunished. Right.
Okay, so now I'm going to shift into the property tax supported funds, and these are those funds I'll talk about. And then the age-old topic of what about the fact that we have to cut some of those budgets before we even start. So these are two issues that require us to change our thinking. We have to take the total amount that we normally would be allowed to have and reduce it by these two factors. So the first one is the circuit breaker. And the circuit breaker, the good news about the circuit breaker is, if there would ever be good news, is back in 2015, the total amount was $7.9 million. Okay, that's where it peaked. From 2009, and then it peaked at 2015 at $7.9 million. It's now, the estimate is about $6.6 million for 2016. So that's really good news. The reason for that is because the assessed value of within our boundaries has gone up. So that means that people are their cap has now increased. So they're paying more than what they were paying before because their 1% or 2% or 3% has raised, and that's causing them to pay a greater part of their tax bill and getting less of a discount maybe than what they were getting before. So, and we get to capture that. All us and all the other units in our boundaries get to capture the benefit of that increased assessed value. So, it's still difficult to manage to lose $6.6 million a year. And as you can see, since 2009, that is a substantial hit, almost $59 million we've lost since then. And this is going to go on for year after year after year. But I thought it was important to note that it has gone down. So we're losing about 9% of our total allowed levy through the circuit breaker. And then this topic, which is a little complicated, as you know, is the pension bond tax neutrality. And many school districts had retirement severance plans where they gave funds to teachers or other employees when they left their school districts, in addition to what they would collect in PERF. And the state said at that time, nope, you can't continue to do that anymore unless you actuarially fund that program. We're going to let you get a bond issue in order to become compliant with that rule, which we did, and most every school district in the state did it at the time. And but the bond has to be paid back, and when it gets paid back, it can increase property taxes. So in order to be pension bond tax neutral, you have to cut something else. So this will be paid off in 2021 and won't be an issue after that, but at the moment it still is an issue. And the next slide shows you those areas that we're cutting in order to be tax neutral on the repayment of the pension bond. So this began in 2005. This is another about $49 million that we've had to cut from budgets in order to be compliant with that rule. The total is about $3.2 million a year that we have to find, and so we've been cutting recently from capital projects and transportation fund. As you can see, many years we cut out of the bus replacement fund, but that was proving to be difficult because we're far behind on our 12-year replacement plan as it is, so that's why we switched over to transportation. So,
But Kathy, you have this sort of tied into our overall budget scheme of debt refinancing, that we have certain projects before 2021 that are going to drop off and no longer be a burden to us because we paid them off.
well, this particular topic doesn't fit into that equation. That fits into the other debt because since this is tax neutral, it's no problem because it's basically zeroed out by making these cuts that we're making to other funds. But you're correct on debt service, which we'll get to in just a second. So we'll get to debt now. And these are the major debt funds that we have. And as you just alluded to there, Jordan, on the debt service fund, the Northside and Nutrition Services Center are paid off this year. So now we're able to take out additional debt in the referendum debt fund and remain at the promised level that we told our constituents when they voted for the referendum, because that debt went away. So we can keep that tax rate flat. Also, the technology loans run through the debt service fund. So the CSF loan that you approved tonight, that runs through the debt service fund also. And that remains fairly constant. And when we did our projections for the overall tax rate for the referendum and the debt service fund, we included that we would probably continue to borrow every year for technology. So that's part of that overall plan. And then the referendum debt fund is the next fund, and then the pension debt fund, which, as I said, it is tax neutral, so it doesn't really fit into that equation. I know this chart's a little bit difficult to read, but the first yellow line represents the debt service fund, the first fund that we talked about. And you can see that the overall payments in that fund are going down about if I'm looking right, $8.2 million, yeah. And that's because of Northside and the Food Service Center. But you can see there the state technology loans, about $3.2 million. So that's the result of approving the STAA loans and the Common School Fund loans every year. Common School Fund loans are paid off in 2 years. The STAA loans are paid off in 1 year. So we're just expect to maintain. If for some reason we wouldn't get a CSF loan because other districts beat us, since that's a competitive loan, we could determine to go outside the state method of borrowing and borrow from somebody else if we wanted to do that. So that would be a choice we could make.
Is that a yearly competitive thing?
Yes. Actually, it's twice a year. It's twice a year, and we typically get it
Okay.
every time. We fall in the middle of the assessed value per pupil. We're not at the high end or the low end, we're about right in the middle, but we have been successful in getting that about every time we've applied. The second one, the second yellow line is the referendum debt, and that one is going to go up next year because, in fact, we'll be doing another debt issue towards the end of this year. So all of this is structured so at that bottom yellow box there, that we stay at the 0.3028 or lower. That's what we promised the community that we would do. So that's, we estimate that we'll be lower than 0.3028, but our goal is just to be right at the 0.3028. And then this is the pension debt, and just shows you the difference between last year, very small, almost the same as last year. The next fund is the Racial Balance Fund, and this was established in 1989, and we use this fund to provide resources to help support racial balance in our schools. So the first, or this chart right here, shows how we spend this $7.1 million. About a third of it is spent on magnet school programs, in addition to what we would do to provide in a normal school. So we don't pay for general classroom teachers out of this, but we pay for resource teachers that are in addition to in those schools. We also pay for an instructional teacher coach in every single elementary school from this fund. We pay for the preschool programs at Bunch and Young out of Racial Balance. And we pay for FACE operations out of this fund. And we also, in the past, paid for student services out of here. So that's the same thing, but a new name. The Capital Projects Fund is the next fund, and we are required to have a 3-year plan by the state, and that's going to continue even when the buckets get put together. So we'll be required to have that plan, which I think is a good thing. You should have to have that plan. But it'll be folded into the other plan. We do have a lower rate than other districts because of the Racial Balance Fund. So when that was the negotiating that went on at the time to get the Racial Balance Fund, it kind of goes back to tax neutrality, like in the pension bond. Okay, that's fine, we'll let you spend money on that topic, which would normally be like a general fund topic, but you're going to have to cut the Capital Projects Fund in order for us to allow you to have that fund. So that was the deal that was made back in 1989. So we do have 62 buildings, and we do have 11 that still are not completely air conditioned, but they will be in this referendum, so that's good news. So here's the 3-year plan that you'll be asked to approve. This is what will be advertised in the newspaper. It totals $19,500,000, but keep in mind, $6.2 million of that is for the utilities and insurance topic that I brought up back when we were talking about the general fund. So really, we have about $13.3 million available in this plan for CPF. And the first line, the green line, I'm going to give you more detail on. That's why that's highlighted. The next slide shows you a comparison to this year. You'll notice that we increased this about $3 million, and part of the reason for that is because of that lower circuit breaker. We have not taken advantage of the fact that circuit breaker has gone down since 2015. We didn't take advantage of it in 16 and 17, and because we didn't really believe it, but now that we know it's for real, we're taking advantage of it this year. So that's why with some of the carryover cash balance we have because of that reduced circuit breaker and lower this year, we are able to bump up our capital project spending. So the next slide then will show you the detail for that green line, and you can see the areas that we bumped up, a little bit in all the lines, but mostly in roof replacement and HVAC replacement. Those are areas that we want to make sure that we continue to keep up to date. Some of those are buildings that are not in the referendum, and some of this could be in buildings even that are in the referendum if their focus wasn't that particular area. For instance, if a building was only getting air conditioning, they still might need a roof, so that could be in the plan. Next is transportation. As you can see, this is a large operation that we have. The next slide will show you the total transportation budget is about $18 million. And of that, about 75% plus is wages and fringe benefits of school bus drivers and technicians that work on the buses, as well as the office staffs. The 14% that goes to materials and supplies, that's the area that pays for fuel and tires and parts, that type of thing, to keep the buses up. And then the other areas are much smaller, include some utilities and other expenditures of the transportation area. This is the 12-year bus replacement plan, and you can see that the largest year is the coming year, and that's because we're behind schedule. So we have 44 buses that are 12 years or older in 2018. In 19, if we bought all 44 of those buses, we'd have 30 buses that were 12 years or older. So we have about a $40 million inventory at today's cost. The next slide shows you that unfortunately, we're not going to be able to buy all 44 of those buses. We're expected to be able to fund 30 of those buses next year, meaning that 14 will have to get carried over until 2019. That means that, but our expectation is, now all of this is going to be dependent upon how we view the new bucket system after beginning next year, 2019. But if we keep in our minds that we want to follow the 12-year plan, which you still have to have a 12-year plan, even with the new bucket system, we would expect to be at the plan in 2023. So that's our hope, is that we can eventually work towards that plan.
When you say work the plan, you mean we will catch up?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we would catch up. Yep. And go back one slide, Rosie. So you can see in 2022, notice that there's only 5 buses that would be due that year.
Yeah.
That's where we start to
Okay.
get caught up, is because
Okay.
yeah. So 2023 would be the first year we would be like right at the caught up then completely. Okay. Next is the Museum of Art, and this is shown net of the circuit breaker that would be available to the Museum of Art. So this is for funds that pass through our budget, but then we just turn around and write a check to the Museum of Art, and it's to help them support our students in their program. So this is the total of the budgets that you saw tonight. The first column represents if we were able to collect 100% of what we're allowed to collect, and then the reductions that are required to show you that the final expected budget is about $295 million. So we've had to cut about $10 million from the allowed amount to get to the expected amount. This is a comparison to the 2017 budget, so it's an increase of about 1.9%. The largest increase is in the general fund. And then this is to show you what the comparison is along with the estimated tax levy. So of the $295 million that this budget represents, about $72 million of that comes from property taxes, and it's a tax rate of $1.02. So that's the conclusion. Our key takeaways tonight are that the good news is that our enrollment has gone up, and we hope to see that continue. The general fund increase is only 0.7%, which is not exciting. Our debt funds are at the promised rate of 0.3028 or lower when we conclude our business with the state. The bus replacement plan is projected to meet that goal in 2023. Our overall budget increase is 1.9%, and then next year we're going to see big changes coming in the way we budget.
Kathy, on the debt fund, I just want to be clear on one point. We promised not to increase our tax rate above a certain percent, and we've met that promise.
Yes.
And if I recall correctly, if I have a $100,000 home, and my house is assessed at $89,100, but if I have a $100,000 home, in giving our kids safe places, safe foyers, air conditioning, better lighting, better conditions, for better study, the referendums, based upon what you've been capable of doing with offsetting decreasing debt that's falling off, and bidding the referendums in the manner that you have bid them, I call it a bucket of chicken. It's $11 a year for a $100,000 home in supporting our district. Is that fair?
And it was a one-time increase, and then it just stayed there, right?
So to
It doesn't go
support-
up.
To support my schools in the way that we're giving air conditioning over 2018 to 100% of our schools, to give lighting to 100% of our schools, to give remediation projects to all of our schools. As a father of a family of 4 with a $100,000 home, it's a bucket of chicken to me a year, $11 a year. Fair?
Fair.
Where do you get your chicken? That won't feed my family. But that's awesome. Kathy, I have one other question. I know that we did make some drastic changes in the area of transportation because of the projections a couple of years ago when we went through this budget process. Can you just give us a recap of how things turned out? I mean, were we able to stem the bleeding, if you will, of the 2.5 million that was projected losses, annual losses, through the changes that we made? Just give us a recap.
Yep. The plan worked well for us, and we don't see any other cuts in the future. We also had some other things going for us, that fuel prices have gone down since we made those cuts. And this wasn't good for us, but we weren't able to fully staff either for a while, so that gave us some additional savings. We want to be fully staffed so that we can keep all of those buses moving. But yeah, the program, by switching to that, the new program, we did make our transportation fund healthier, and then we had additional benefits that came along the way also because of those two factors that I talked about. So we're in good shape in transportation right now.
That's good to know.
Kathy, the HB 1009, does that refer back to the bucket you were talking
Yes,
about, the changes?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Mhm. Yep.
Kathy, back to bullet number 3 on debt. When you talk about promise, that promise was to our taxpayers, correct?
Yes.
That's a promise we made, that as we would repair and renovate our schools, we would not increase that cost of borrowing of those repairs to that amount. And we're holding true to that promise, to our taxpayers. Okay.
Yep.
I think something Glenna said, that we just, we've talked about it, but we kind of went past it quickly. There were lots of circumstances, and yes, the plan helped us in terms of cutting of the transportation, but we have to still be cautious because we really can't find people to drive the buses. And we didn't realize this necessarily at the time we started, but we still are understaffed, and if we had not made those cuts, we would not be able to get kids to school on time. So I think the blessing has been something we didn't really do it for. We did it because of the money, but with employment being what it is, we are struggling still. And Charles and Frank are doing some incentives to try to get bus drivers, but we still are about as stretched as we can be because we can't staff. So hopefully that'll turn around, because if we could, we'd want to have enough drivers to staff.
Okay, so the last thing is just a reminder of what the calendar is. So we'll be back here on the 9th for a public hearing, and then October the 23rd will be the vote. So be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
So next year at this time, because of the change in the law, you'll have, I mean, for you, the presentation may be similar, but it definitely will be different, because next year at this time, we will be approving a 2019 budget, and the buckets will change, and
Yeah, I think it.
you'll have to think about
I
how you
really-
want to do that.
Yeah, I think that
Right.
we need a lot of education
Right.
about that, and prior probably to this night, on what all of that meant. And we may want to have some work sessions or other things to talk about, what's going to happen. We may not be at the point where we're presenting the actual budget, but talking about decision-making that has to happen and all of that. So Yeah, it will definitely be
be a
different.
challenge for
It will
you
be
and your
different. But,
staff.
everybody in the whole state will be going through it at
Right,
the same time,
right.
so.
Now, you're moving your data to a new software system, correct?
The only thing that, we're not moving our day-to-day financial system, but what we're doing is we've purchased a new budgeting system so that we go from spreadsheets to an automated system that will roll up our numbers. We really think this is going to help us a lot, especially during this transition.
So this doesn't include your chart of accounts?
Yeah, it will have our chart of accounts in it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll have, what we'll do is we'll dump from our AS400 into this software, and then it'll allow us to manipulate and to
Right.
try different things out, or like, if you wanted to do some salary projections or fringe projections or all that kind of thing, this software will let us do it in a much easier and more, an environment that is better than a spreadsheet environment, which can not exact, be always accurate, So we're really looking forward to this. Rosie is, and thanks to Rosie for all she did to help me with the budget. She's doing a great job. But she is really working on this new software so that we can get up and running for 2019. So,
Maybe we can give Gary and Deanna our old system.
well,
They have-
They don't have one. It's all set
Ann
up.
Muncy.
We're not going to loan Kathy out, though. We're keeping her.
But I think you also have to take credit as board members, is that we televise our meetings and you ask the right questions. So I think some of that has to be the decision-making that you make, and that we have work sessions and we talk about it and we get out into the community. I think a lot of districts forget that they are really spending public money. And so I feel badly for them, but I think you need to take credit for the kind of meetings we have and the questions you ask. You read what we send.
And this PowerPoint, this deck of slides will go on our website?
it will, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, it will. Yep.
I found it interesting because the city is going through the same thing right now, right? With budget hearings and stuff with the city council, and if people aren't really paying attention, I think I saw today that the city's budget is about 165 million.
Yep.
So people forget how big we are. We have nearly 4,000 employees and how big our budget is. A lot of moving pieces. There'll be even more moving pieces beginning in 2019, but,
Yeah.
kudos to you and your
Yeah.
staff for the great job that you do.
Thanks.
I don't know the size of the Indianapolis Public Schools budget, but for many years, maybe still, was larger than ours. But, to your point, Julie, we are either the second or third largest local taxing unit in the state of Indiana. I mean, outside of the city of Indianapolis.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our meeting. We will meet next in October, on October 9th. So, Steve, you want to begin?
Sure, two items to share with you and members of the public. This past Friday, my organization, Latinos Count, hosted 150 Latino young men, grades 9 through 12, from Fort Wayne Community Schools and a couple of other districts. We had them at Ivy Tech to explore careers and opportunities after high school. We showed them the video, the chamber video, and tried to make the relevance of the fact that if you have a skill that local employers need, there are some great opportunities and some exciting chapters that are building in Fort Wayne. The kids really liked the video. I know that I heard from counselors who said as they were returning to their schools, they passed some of those locations. But it was, I think, a good day. We had a number of role models that spoke to young people. And thanks to, in our district, Shanita Piper, Martin Murphy, and our high school counselors at each of our 5 buildings. This week, I'm headed to New Orleans for the NSBA, National School Board Association, Council of Urban Boards of Education conference. I will be facilitating a panel discussion. I believe it's Friday on the state of urban schools, so that should be a pretty interesting conversation.
They chose the right guy to do that, Mr. MC.
Well, have fun.
Glenna?
Nothing at this time.
I have nothing either.
I have no comment.
No.
I probably shouldn't say it, but I'm tired of the divisiveness within this nation. It troubles me that we can't come together as a people and resolve our problems and our differences. Because I don't see it with my Julian. It's not a question of your race, your color, your religion, your background, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation. These kids are friends. And they see a problem and they work together to resolve the problem. And as parents, as grandparents, as aunts and uncles, take the lead from the kids in Fort Wayne Community Schools, because whatever's happening, it's happening right.
Thanks, Jordan. Dr. Robinson?
It's been a busy day in this district. We had, several of us attended a downtown Rotary meeting at Washington, and Rotary has been a sponsor of Washington since 2003. Since 2003. They willingly told me, just bring it on when we combine those two schools. And the list of activities, we need to put that in weekly. It is phenomenal to see business people in our cafeteria at Washington. Deneen Neff is doing a phenomenal job with them. But there are people who are absolute zealots for those children, and I just want to publicly talk about the downtown Rotary. Then we made a mad dash from Washington over to St. Joe this afternoon, St. Joe Central, and Chuck Sirac has continued his support of us. It was Little Kids Rock. He has donated a complete musical, I can't even describe it, ukuleles and guitars and sound systems and drum sets, and he is giving those materials to 6 schools to jumpstart. We're trying to make sure with the Be Instrumental, he is chairing our fundraising committee for instruments in middle schools and high schools, but this is just a wonderful piece today. And Laura McCoy there at St. Joe Central, and Bill just knows how to throw a party. And he made sure that everybody in that neighborhood knew we were supporting Sweetwater coming to us today. And the funniest thing is we're driving up, Krista and Ged and I, and the kids are waving and thanking Sweetwater, and I couldn't help it. I rolled my window down and said, thank you, but not Sweetwater. But it was a wonderful event, and just shows what this community thinks about us. And we have really strong partners. And the best part is, I hope Krista has pictures she can put on the web, the faces of the kids. And I think Mr. Chirac was blown away by the fact that our kids not only know why he was there, but they appreciate, and Bill did a great job of making sure they did. But just a great day today. We're worn out.
Right.
But
And it's
a good
only Monday.
community thing. Good community thing. So thank you.
Jordan, I just want to thank you for your comments. It makes me think that, communities are stronger when we have shared experiences and we have shared values, and I think that's really the promise and the value of public schools, is that, you bring together all types of students and families with different backgrounds and different experiences and different ethnicities, and they're able to go to school together and share the same things, share the same experiences, learn to understand each other, learn that, nobody is only a member of some group, they are individuals. And, I think the more that, and that, I think, is the big positive, the big advantages of Fort Wayne Community Schools. It's diversity and the experiences that our students get. And I shared an article, I think, with all of you, but I thought it was interesting. There was some recent research that came out from the University of Illinois that says that students who take a dual credit course in high school their degree completion post-secondary is significantly better as compared to students who do not take a dual credit course in high school. So if, people are wondering about the value of that program, I mean, I've always felt that it was good for students to experience a closer experience to what college could be like. But the research shows that it's definitely beneficial to students. And of course, we're sort of under the gun for teachers to try to get their dual credit certifications. And I think I mentioned this before, but I know Indiana University has stepped up and is offering tuition-free courses to teachers who are trying to get the 18 graduate hours they need in their area to get their certification to teach a dual credit course. So they've laid down the gauntlet to Purdue, so Purdue needs to step up too. That's all I have, so if we have a
Move for adjournment.
Steve, thanks, Jordan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and the microphone is open if anyone